Okay, so this next video is from Sha. We've seen quite a couple of his videos. I was going to say quite a few, but we've seen a couple of his videos. And this one in specific, it says Mythic plus Tank rankings. As you can imagine, that is something that I care deeply about. So let's see where the tank rankings are so far. Everybody keeps saying that Warrior is friggin' amazing and all of that. So let's see if that's true or not.
Last week, Blizzard graced us with our first wave of Mythic Plus testing, and while we were only able to have access to 2 of those dungeons, this was an extremely enjoyable process. And over the last 3 days, I put in about 30 hours of testing across all 6 tanks to really figure out what classes seem like they're going to shine, and which ones probably need a little more elbow grease. In this video, I wanted to quickly talk about the tank tier sets in Mythic Plus, how the classes feel and what bugs are still occurring, which may play a part in our analysis. We're going to use a tier list system to try to visually demonstrate how the class feels thus far. I normally try to push these types of videos out at a certain time, but Blizzard hit us with a new beta build about 18 hours early. There are some data-mined nerfs, and I will discuss those more in a future video. These rankings are based off of last weekend's Mythic Plus testing for Azure Vault and Ruby Life pools. Anyways, if you end up enjoying this video, leave a like down below and let me know what you guys think in the comments. Give me something to do while I enjoy my morning coffee. Let's dive into the video. First off, let's start with the issues of testing because I think it's important to note. Regarding Guardian Druid, we all know how I feel about this shit spec. Their tier set was actually miraculously reworked. A lot of you guys have been asking how I feel about this new set, and personally, it's great, honestly. Mythic Plus Gore procs will probably take the priority over almost everything you do in order to keep the buff up. There might be a point where Thrash may supersede the proc, but that's probably a topic for another video, especially after the recent Ursoc's Fury nerf. Since this tier set wasn't able to be used in the first wave of testing, Bear will probably rank a little lower. There are, per usual, still whispers of a Guardian Druid, seeing a rework in the talent tree or restructure at least, but if that's the case, I would definitely consider this to be more of a dark horse choice when it comes to ranking it on a tier list. Another issue I found, and I'm not sure if it's intended, but the Blood DK tier set will only grant stacks when a Bone Shield charge is actually consumed through taking damage. This makes BDK a lot weaker in Mythic Plus and Raid, since Tombstone currently isn't allowing control over the buff. Don't worry, I gave feedback in game though, and hopefully the set gets fixed and it's just a bug. But if this is how it's meant to be, well, sorry Death Knights, sucks to suck. Lastly, there were a few glaring issues with Protection Paladin regarding some of the talent choices. While there are a lot of bugs within the class, some of the major standouts are actually the Sanctified Wrath talent granting 2 versions of the buff. One being the increased duration on wings alongside the extra holy power generation from Judgment, but the other one is granting the Retribution version of the buff, which is causing the Paladin to AoE nuke everything when expunging their holy power. As you may guess, this has caused a massive spike in damage. For the record, I wish protection worked like this, but we can assume it's a bug and will probably be fixed. Due to this bug though, you can easily gain about 15% increased damage over the course of a dungeon run. To be fair, Bulwark of Righteous Fear.
Somehow the Paladin bugs are never really negative. It's like, oh, my character's bugged. Okay, what's the problem? Well, I deal too much damage. Oops. There's somewhere at Blizzard going like, oops, I totally didn't mean to do that, I swear.
Fury is not working at all either, so maybe it's just making up for the damage that's lost here. Also, Gift of the Golden Valkyrie is granting the Paladin almost permanent uptime on Guardian of Ancient Kings buff, which is insane. Because of all these bugs, I personally tried to stay away from Paladin in the first bit of testing. While it's fun, it's pretty clear that it's not intended, so in my mind, it's not worth testing. Obviously, there's arguments to be made that
wait.
Maybe play working talents, but working for...
Did I hear that right? Did he say permanently?
Gift of the Golden Valkyrie is granting the Paladin almost permanent uptime on Guardian of Ancient Kings buff.
Why not? Let's get him permanent guardian. Yeah, just let him have it. Yeah, why not? Bro, I swear. It's always the fucking Paladins, bro.
Which is insane. Because of all these bugs, I personally tried to stay away from Paladin in the first bit of testing. While it's fun, it's pretty clear that it's not intended, so in my mind, it's not worth testing. Obviously, there's arguments to be made that just maybe play working talents, but working versus optimal are two different things. With all the major issues out of the way, let's get into ranking the tier sets in Mythic Plus. Normally, I mix up the rankings a bit, but in this video, we're going to use the standard S through C tiers. This list is going to attempt to rank the tanks and how they're currently performing after the first wave of Mythic Plus testing. Now, disclaimer, this is mostly through my own experience as well as some third-party sources. I think it's important to note what tanks are performing well and which ones are causing the weaker tanks to underperform. I want to start off with the 3 tanks that I just talked about, starting with Guardian Druid. With the tier set not working or being implemented yet, in the first round of testing, I can't really say that all is looking great for this tank, but I want to mention that the raw healing and damage of this class are right on par with all the other tanks. It's not really the class being undertuned in any way, well, until the last nerf to Ursac's Fury talent. I think the nerf will actually push a good bit of Guardian Druids off the class. As I've complained before, the lack of a real talent tree and flexible options essentially catered to damage profiles and utility really weaken the class. Because of these reasons, I think we'll sadly have to place Guardian Druid in C tier until the new tier set is, incorporated.
Okay.
I hope I can look back on this video soon and laugh. Let's quickly talk about Death Knight. This unkillable god of a tank feels incredibly good to play. While you can typically easily outlive your entire group, the damage for this class is a little underwhelming. While some cooldowns can allow the Death Knight to pump, it seems to fall short in consistent throughput. The playstyle of Death Knight focuses on maintaining a handful of different buffs, which results in a pretty passive damage profile on Mythic Plus. Even though the damage is a little lower, it's not out of the question for being a viable tank. I think Death Knight mains will be extremely happy with how the class plays, and where it lacks in damage, I think it's going to make up for in control and survivability. Once they fix the tier set interactions with Tombstone, I think this tank will probably be a solid A tier. The Paladin tier set is actually really good and has great uptime in Mythic Plus. Accompanied with the Dusk and Dawn playstyle, it makes for a really enjoyable gameplay flow. The toolkit of the Paladin is extremely flexible in the class tree with how many different mechanics were presented. There are a couple of great spots for Blessing of Freedom, Sacrifice, and Blessing of Protection as well. Their damage, despite being slightly bugged, seems to be above average when compared to some of the other tanks, which is really important when up against the timer. What's even nicer is that they're no longer capped on Avenger Shield damage, since the Tears Enforcer talent now will cleave everything around each target hit. I think Paladin is the dark horse still, but I'm confident it will find itself in an A tier until tuning happens. Next, let's talk about the Brewmaster Monk. I thoroughly enjoyed the ebb and flow of this class, but in regards to their tier set, it's fairly underwhelming since it focuses on stagger. While that's great for physical damage, there seems to be a fair...
Well, I mean, stagger's like their main mechanic. Isn't that a good thing? Again, I didn't get to test it, but I kind of feel like that should be a good thing. Yeah, it focuses on stagger. That's good, right? I don't know.
A bit of magical damage in these 2 dungeons. For those who don't know, Monk's Dagger is actually only 35% effective against magic damage. Normally this class needs to lean on its healer a little bit more than the other tanks do. This wasn't a problem in late Shadowlands due to the insane self-healing of the tier set they had, accompanied with the complementary soulbinds, conduits, and legendaries. The rework to their class tree doesn't allow for much self-healing, and our health pool has been reduced, well, back to where it has been. Stagger, while insane...
I'm gonna be real, like, a lot of healers really like tanks to self-heal so that they can deal damage. It's like I get in the Mythic Plus environment, of course, that is useful for the tanks to be able to sustain themselves a little bit better, makes things easier on the healer, they can focus on everybody else, they can also focus on dealing more damage. But it's like, I am getting tired of this notion that it's like, yeah, tanks should self-heal. It's like, well, what the fuck are the healers there for? If the tanks are self-healing, you know? It's like I wish there was more focus on healers healing more instead of being worried about DPS, and tanks just like having their own mechanics as to how they survive, more so than how much they can heal themselves.
Overpowered for physical damage, it really hurts the Brewmaster in Mythic Plus. Monk has always been a tank that I think can perform really well in the Mythic Plus environment, but I think this might be a slight setback. With that being said, I think Monk will probably fall into the B tier. Protection Warrior seems to be Blizzard's little golden child. All of beta testing, this class has been at the forefront of changes and tuning, and surprisingly is still in an insanely good spot. Their tier set is giving them really high uptime on a flat 4% damage buff and a 4% damage taken decrease. While boring, it's pretty easy to use. On top of that, warrior gains ignore pain equal to 5% of their damage they deal. This was nerfed down from 10%, but either way, still a really strong passive bonus.
Protection warrior looking
With
good.
an insanely flexible tree, multiple builds, and countless utility options, I think it's no surprise that this tank is performing really well. I'm going to have to put it at the top of A tier because I think while this class has been receiving all the attention, I think another tank has snuck right on by to claim an S tier ranking. That brings us to our last remaining tank, the Vengeance Demon Hunter.
Bro, not again! Not again! Fuck! The fucking elves! Here we go! God damn, dude. Daggerus, I am currently progging Savage. We are on P7S.
While most tier sets deal with a damage increase and a damage reduction in a passive way, the Vengeance Demon Hunter I personally think got the better end of the stick.
Of
Not
course.
only has its damage increase on both
Of
spenders
course
and
it
builders,
is.
they also have an increased Fury generation, and the damage reduction accompanied with the set bonus is a whopping 15%. With the ability to spam Soul Cleave frequently, we are seeing upwards of 20% uptime on this in Mythic Plus in an optimized run. While their tree was recently reworked and most players I think are pretty unhappy with those changes, myself included, it's hard to ignore how stable this tank feels regardless. It's easy for me to place this tank into the S tier. Overall, I think I can say that while there is a little bit of spread between Brewmaster and DH, I think overall they're pretty close. Well, except Bear. I'm not sure about most of you, but I have high expectations for tank performance. Blood Death Knight aside, I think we could say that most of Shadowlands' tanking balance was actually done really well, up until the very end where Blood Death Knight catapulted ahead. I'm still holding out for Bear to make a comeback.
Not the start of Shadowlands, I'll tell you that much, because at the start of Shadowlands, Warrior was dog shit. Dog shit ass garbage. Eesh.
But I have my doubts. The recent tier set rework that was just implemented was great, but accompanied with a massive nerf to their most reliable source of self-healing, so I'm, like most of you, extremely skeptical. Until we can test the new round of tuning, and probably more Mythic Plus, I'm pretty content with these rankings. But let me know what you guys think down below. While I do play every tank, there may have been some oversight. Or at least let's get an F in chat about Blood DK's nerf to Shattering Bone. Huge shout out to all my Patreons for fueling my coffee addiction. Remember, leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.
Guys, like I always say, I already linked the channel. Make sure to check it out. Leave a like in the video. Subscribe if you like Sha's content. It's really good stuff. I enjoy it. So, yeah. Good stuff.